Welcome back to Mindful Endeavors. Today we are joined by Larayna, but first, quick disclaimer, as always, we are not mental health professionals. Keep that in mind. We're just sharing stories and sharing our input as to what goes on in the mental health world, and if we have any other experiences or any kind of suggestions that we might give out, it's up to you if you feel that they might meet your needs. But as always, if you feel that you are very stressed and all that stuff, please don't hesitate and call a mental health professional. All right, so Larayna, so we met on Instagram, not necessarily in person, but we started chatting there, and the fishing community did bring us together, and we've been basically online friends since then. And thank you for, again, like I said, not writing me off as a creep. I'm just here to fish and talk to people. That's it. So go ahead and describe a little bit about yourself and what you do in the outdoors and how you got into it.
Sure. So we did meet on Instagram, and you catch some pretty sweet fish. I also like to catch pretty cool fish.
Mm-hmm.
So isn't that such a fun aspect of the internet, that we get to connect with other people who enjoy our hobbies?
Mm-hmm.
But so as you mentioned, my name is Larayna. I actually live up in the inland northwest area. I'm in Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got two little kiddos. I run a business. I work in the fishing department for Sportsman's Warehouse.
Okay.
So that's my newest thing, and I'm loving it because honestly, I thought I knew how to fish, and then I started working and realized very quickly that I did not. So, it's just an endless amount of stuff to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyways, that's what I've been doing, and that's about all.
So how did you get into fishing? Because for me personally, it was because of COVID, and that's another, again, inspiration of this podcast is the whole mental health aspect of COVID. But so fishing kind of, I don't want to exaggerate and say that it saved my life, but it definitely did help out. And this was back in April when I started fishing. So how did you get into that?
Off and on, I've always fished. So I was born in Oceanside, California, which is like North County, San Diego.
Okay.
And my dad was a Marine. So I was born right there on the coast. We used to just go over to the pier. He taught me how to fish. I didn't learn a ton on how to do it myself, but I was, always bringing in some fish. And then I moved to Tennessee, learned how to catch bass and crappie and catfish. And then, when I was in high school, I had moved back, and I wasn't at my dad's anymore. I was back in California, and I went through a long period of time where I didn't fish.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving back up to Washington State, I was like, I am surrounded by water, and this is just awesome. I can, drive 15 minutes, 20 minutes away and be on the water and catch trout, bass, everything. So I learned how to tie my own knots, and, the difference between monofilament and fluorocarbon and braid and everything else. And you're right. There's something about fishing that you just zone out, and it does. It definitely changes your life for the better on most days.
Yeah, on most days. Sometimes bad stuff happens, but even then, it's still a pretty good fishing day. Like today, on my way back from doing errands, I stopped by a park, and I've never caught a fish from there. I've only fished it 2 other times, and today was my day. I caught a 3.25 pound bass from there. Nice. And as I was releasing, because I was so excited and everything, I was like, I finally caught a fish here, and a good one, because I've seen several people trying to catch fish, and they were only able to catch a bluegill or sunfish, and I caught mine, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna release them gracefully, and I'm kind of like climbing, like stepping down the rock. Didn't realize it was kind of slick towards the bottom. So as soon as I released them, I slip in, and my whole entire foot my whole right leg just goes straight into the water. And now my shoes are messed up. It smells horrible. They smell like pond water. But, and there was this little girl that was like, like right next to me, because she was like impressed that I caught the fish. So she just started laughing, and like, instead of being mad, like her laugh made me laugh. So just like, it's a good memory that definitely I'm gonna keep for a while.
Yeah.
And
worse things could totally happen. At least you caught a fish, because it'd be really frustrating to try to land him, and then he gets off the hook, and then you fell in, because that'd be just frustrating. So
Well, what was
And
frustrating
at
it
least it's warm-ish down there, right?
today it was actually pretty warm. I think it was like in mid 70s, and the sun was
Okay.
definitely
Today it
beaming.
was definitely 39 up here.
Oh God,
So
yeah,
you don't want
and
to fall in.
no, no, and I'm from California, like born and raised most of my life, and I'm still not used to the cold. Like I know we've talked about that, at one point, and yeah, it gets at 50 degrees here, and with the wind chill, I'm dead. Like that's it. I'm dead.
You're no good. You're done. You're
Yeah.
out there in like gloves and waders and like hand warmers. No, I was out. So my mom lives up off the river, and part of my deal is even if I only have a few minutes, I will just stop at the river and I'll tell my mom, "Hey, I'm stopping at the riverbank," and she's like, "What the hell's the riverbank?" No, the literal riverbank. We're gonna go, cast a little bit. She's like, "You've never caught anything there. Why do you keep going back?" I'm like, and this is with fly fishing. I'm like, there's just something about fly fishing and just the momentum of it, and the rhythm of it. You just zone out, and it's I don't know. You go into a trance. It's so soothing, and you just forget about everything else in that moment. So
Yeah, I've seen a couple people fly fishing, and like I see how, like, just patient and relaxed even though you're like from an outsider they're looking in, it looks like they're just straight up chucking the line, but no, like they look so like relaxed and laid back, and
yeah,
it's just like slowly and just
yeah.
releasing the line, which is like, dude, I want to learn how to do that. That way I can just basically straight up lasso a bass, so.
It is. It's very graceful and it looks really pretty. You can tell the really good guys because they don't actually. So when you're pulling your line back and forth, it's called false casting. And
Mm,
the guys who are really good, eventually you'll see that their line is on the water, and then they'll just like roll it back out. So they don't do a lot of false casting. It looks really pretty, but there's a lot more room for error.
mm,
But for me, that's the only way I can get more line out. So because every time I'm casting it forward, I'm letting more line go out.
mm.
So I'll be honest, I suck at fly fishing. I just started at the end of August. A friend of mine uh, very graciously gifted me a fly rod,
Yeah.
and I've been out trying my best. And in comparison to gear fishing, it's I don't. I'm assuming, do you use a bait caster?
Yes.
Do you remember going from spin to bait caster, and you're just like, this is horrible. Like, why does anybody do this? So that's kind of what it feels like for me going from gear fishing to fly fishing. I've been wrapped in my line before. Trying to make sure you don't miss those strikes is really challenging because the way you set the hook, and you're using tiny little like size 18 hooks that are barbless.
Mm.
It's crazy, but
You,
it's so much fun.
you know what? I don't doubt it's fun because, like I said, like when I see people just fly fishing like at a pond, I'm just like, I kind of just stop for a second. I'm just like looking like, oh wow, this looks awesome.
Yeah.
Like I want to do that. But I mean, I remember going from spin to bait cast. So the benefit, I guess, of when the lockdowns first happened is that I wasn't going to the gym, so I had so much time to go to the gym because up until coronavirus, um, I was going to the gym like 2.5 hours, maybe almost three. I would spend maybe like 30 minutes, 40 minutes stretching though, so it's not really like I exerted myself. But anyway, so those 2.5 hours were free. So during those 2 hours a day, I would basically YouTube like how to cast a spin caster, a spinning rod, how to cast a bait caster, and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
and so before going from spin to bait casting, I researched a ton, and I got to the point where I was like, all right, well, I'm not gonna buy an expensive rod, an expensive reel to start off. I bought a $50 like or $40 like Abu Garcia Silver Max, and I bought an ugly stick. And those things are,
Ugly stick, that's the way to go.
dude, they're so indestructible. Like I bought an American
I love
made,
it.
yeah, I bought an American made rod, and I mean, this was just like what, maybe 3 months ago, and it got stuck on a rock on a lake, and it broke. Well, actually, no, it broke off a fish. Like there was a fish that was like in the rocks, and I couldn't get it out, so I just kept pulling up, and I hear the rod snap.
Yeah.
Now with the what is it, the ugly stick, I got it stuck in between some rocks, and I was just pulling the freaking rod and it did not give and did not break. And I was just like, dude, this thing's indestructible, man. Like, it's awesome. You know?
Yeah, I just put that thing. So I just bought a new Agoracea Revo X. Probably saw that actually on my Instagram, that Tiffany blue
Yeah.
combo that I bought, which is a smoking deal because just the Revo X reel is $130 and this combo setup is like $160. So awesome deal. Highly recommend it.
It looks nice.
Until then, I was using my GX2, my ugly stick, and I've caught so many different types of fish on that. In hindsight, I'm like, I have no idea how I actually did that. But I don't care. You know, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So
Yeah, I mean, whatever works. I mean, the only reason why I felt like buying a rod was, well, one, because the one that I was looking at was actually made here in Texas. So I was like during that time, I was on a big like, oh, straight Texas, everything Texas, because you know that's my new home, and it's like I came to the realization I'm not leaving. So that's why I bought, you know, from that company, and I mean they're good rods, and I really do appreciate them. But it's like sometimes I'm like, the ugly stick, like, you know, it's hard to get away from that sometimes. And my first rod was actually an ugly stick, which I was able to buy at Costco. It was like a little combo deal that they had for like I think $30 or something like that. And it's actually a light rod, and I was able to pull a 4-pound bass with 8-pound monofilament. Yeah. So
that's crazy.
it happened purely by mistake.
In a long time. Like I use Brave with fluorocarbon leader, and I'm like, I'm never looking back. So I did have to buy something a little more stout though, because this next year I'm planning on targeting tiger muskie and pike a lot more. So that's why I upgraded from my GX2. I just needed something a little more stout to be able to get those like musky up and out of the cover. So
Yeah.
but frog fishing will be a little bit easier too, because trying to get the bass out of the lily pads and stuff on a frog was challenging with the ugly stick. This is a 6-foot rod, so
Okay.
not that great.
Yeah.
It's still I bring it everywhere. I don't go anywhere without my fishing rod.
Same.
I light tackle in my car. It's my emergency tackle box, because every now and then I just pass some water. If you've been driving, you're like, oh yeah, I'm totally gonna stop and fish that. I've got 30 minutes. I've got plenty of time.
Plenty of time. Even 10 minutes is plenty of time. You get like 2 or 3 casts in, depending on what bait you're using.
Yeah. So actually, kind of, you know, coming back into it, because we can probably talk about fishing all day long, which is an important part of what we wanted to chat about. But it's finding those pockets of time, I think, that's really intriguing. Because even if you just spend, I don't know how you feel, but I can spend 10, 15, 20 minutes on the water and just feel completely like replenished, you know, from being out there. And, you know, we're talking about mental health. So I hear all the time, man, how do you do it? You do so many things. You're everywhere all the time. I'm a board member with one of our local nonprofits called Communities in Schools, which, shout out, thank you very much for the donation for our necessity drive. We really appreciate that. So I'm a board member there. You know, I just launched this business. Actually, this is going to be our first week in business. I've owned the community I've had the community for about 3 years, but we just launched the business side of it. I've got a 4 and a 5-year-old. I work at Sportsman's Warehouse. Just a lot of different things going on. And as you can imagine, it's a little draining. You know, physically and mentally, it's draining. And so whenever I hear people tell me, like, gosh, I don't have time for this, or I don't have time for fishing, how do you go fishing all the time? You're always out on the water. I'm like, well, to be honest, that's my form of keeping, like, of self-care, of taking care of myself. Like, I have to be out on the water. Like, I just have to throw my line in a couple times, and I'm happy. Most of the time when I go do that, I don't necessarily catch fish, because I'm usually not out far enough. I'm usually on a dock.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm still chatting with other fishermen on the dock, and I get new tips and tricks for next time, or I make a new friend. But I find the time. I find those little pockets of time because it's important to me, whereas some other people, it might be important for them to go home and read a book. totally fine.
Yeah, so not to cut you off there, but before we continue, that's kind of the reason why when I asked you if you wanted to be on the podcast and you said yes, I was kind of looking forward to this conversation because I know that you have your two little ones and you're also working, you're also fishing, you're also well, I just found out about the whole board, being on that board because that's when I, I was like, well, I'll donate. And, but then you made that announcement on your Instagram that you're going to start your business. So I was just like, yeah, you're the perfect person because, the way that you're balancing everything out and like, because, it shows on your social media presence. So that's kind of the reason why I wanted to have you on. And I'm very grateful that you were able to find the time to like meet with me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the invite, and I think the biggest takeaway, hopefully, besides fishing stuff, I hope the biggest takeaway for your listeners would be this idea of work-life balance. And I don't have it all together. On some days, I drive myself absolutely nuts. But the way I run my day-to-day is I pick the three things for the day that are the most important to me. Mm-hmm. So whether that's friends, family, work, fitness, I kind of divide it up into about 5 different categories, and I pick 3 that I'm going to focus on for the day. And I keep track of what it was for the day that I had intended to commit to, and then I actually did. Right. And then at the end of the week, I analyze, was I lopsided in any of these categories? Like maybe I intended to hang out with my friends, hang out with the kids, and work, but I only worked instead. I can actually analyze that and be able to tell, oh man, I need to spend more time on myself and on my friends and family. So this idea, I suppose, this is a really long explanation, but this idea of perfect work-life balance, it's a fool's errand. I get everything done, but I can't do everything at once. Right. So I've got on a couple things that I can do really well for that day, and I do them, and then I try again the next day. And then fishing. Fishing is definitely a part of that category. It's not even just fishing, it's being outside. So sometimes it looks like a hike, or I take the kids outside to the park. It's mostly fishing, but if I'm not on the water, then I'm talking about being on the water. Yeah. All of that goes for me. So yeah. I think you'll go nuts if you try to do everything every single day.
Yeah. So obviously there's some exceptions, but for the most part, I feel like time management, the lack of having time to do X, Y, Z, whatever you want to like try to do, I feel like that is something that's kind of self-inflicted a lot of times in terms of like the stress and the impact on your mental health, right? Because like you said, sometimes there's situations where you try to do too much, and then sometimes like there's situations. I know, like me personally, I've seen people that like they say that they're busy and they don't have time, but they're just sitting around watching sports. Yeah. That is not busy. Like, like if you want, like if your job is to, I don't know, whatever, make bets or whatever, or just forecast, or if you have a YouTube channel that where you kind of like project, winners and all that stuff, fine. That's something different. And that is going towards a business. But if you're just sitting around watching sports sometimes, I mean, that can be definitely something that mentally decompresses you. But at the same time, like if you're putting the stress that, oh, I want to start a business, but I don't have time, but then you're sitting around watching TV, watching Netflix and doing that, then you're basically self-inflicting that stress.
Well, it's been my observation that yes, people will do that. They like to think that they're busy, and I am totally okay with if that's the way you decompress and you want to watch sports, or just straight up say, I don't have time for that because I'm making time for the football game.
Right.
Cool. But stop lying to yourself and lying to everybody else. And I guess the other piece of that is, I don't have time now, but I'll have time later. I'll do this later. The time is going to pass either way. Yeah. And you're going to come across a lot of hard things in life, and you've just got to pick your heart. Do you want to start now and, have that in the future, or do you want to start then? Or do you want to keep kicking the can down the road and you're never going to start? Because and then people get bitter and upset, and they struggle with, all sorts of stuff because their dreams never came true. But they don't just magically land in your lap.
Right.
So I don't have the same amount of hours in the day that you have and that everybody else has. I choose the things that are a priority to me for the future that I want to create.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and so I get the same question that you do. Like, how do you have time to fish? Because I fish almost every day. Like, there's almost right now I'm trying to spread everything out because I want different content. I want to differentiate a little bit and diversify in terms of the content that goes on my YouTube and my Instagram. But for the most part, like I've gotten that question asked. It's like, well, how do you have so much time? Well, one, definitely single without kids helps. That's one thing. Yeah, just a tad bit, that helps me a little bit because if I, like, I know that that's once, if I ever get a girlfriend and have kids and all that stuff, and if that ever happens, that's just more things that I have to juggle around, right? So, but me personally, I'm kind of relatable to that, what I was just telling you about, like how, like, I would say that I would be busy to do something, and then I turn around and all I'm doing is just researching for stuff that I'm not really going anywhere with. So, yeah. So, COVID was another thing that was like, again, it was a fire that lit under my butt, and I was able to actually move around, and hence we have the podcast.
Right. Actually, this is one of the things that we connected really early on about was the podcast, because I remember having a conversation. I think it was I had posted something about my shotgun, because I'm like, man, now I have to prioritize. Do I want to go fishing? Do I want to hit the water? Or do I want to go to the trap shooting club?
Yeah.
What predicament I am in. So, by the way, the most fun day you could possibly have, go take your shotgun out, shoot some clays, and then hit the water. The best.
Oh yeah. Well,
shooting and fishing in the same day. Anyways, I think that's where that conversation sparked. Sorry, I will rabbit trail all day long. You've got to keep me in check.
mm-hmm. Well,
So you mentioned, I want to do all these things. I want to do this podcast. Why didn't you start yesterday?
Yep, I remember.
Oh, Stranger just called me out on it. So
Yeah, and I remember you telling me, "Well, then do it," with the smiley face, and I'm like, "Damn it, she just called me out, like straight up." And then I'm not gonna lie, that kind of did resonate with me because it was like, you know what? Seriously, why haven't I done it yet? Like, yeah. So, and I think that just hearing it from a stranger, because I was like, all right, well, because I mean, I wasn't looking for sympathy or anything, but I was just kind of like venting more or less, and then you just straight up just blunt do it. I'm like, oh shit, okay, I'll do
you
it.
don't have any reason to not. You have plenty of like fishing pictures and everything to post. I don't know. I think this is great, and this is. Sometimes I consider, like, man, do I really need all these social media accounts? And, is this, like, just, taking time away from my day? And it is, but then it also connects me to people like you, and to Joe, actually, which is so funny that we both know him through the fishing community, and we're all in, like, different states. So shout out to Joe there.
Joby Fish.
His name's cracking me up. I love this. I love this community that we've built. That's the other thing about fishing is I run into a few people here and there who they don't want to tell you any secrets or whatever because they think you're going to take all the fish. And I won't share things with people that I can tell are not going to be respectful of the area. But other than that, I'm like, I am so eager to teach people how to do these things, and let me help you love this the way I do. And I know it's been good. So I'm very grateful that you started your podcast. I love connecting with other people. That's my specialty and my gift in life is being able to connect people and to help them push towards that vision. So,
well, since we're on that topic now, which it's a very good transition point because that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and I mean it's something that I'm probably going to bring up a lot with other guests because again, I'm a lot of people that I'm going to bring on or I plan to bring on. Some like half of them I've met through Instagram and social media. So there is, I know there's a lot of stigma now of like social media, and like when you look at what Twitter used to be, Twitter was just like, hey, Al is going to go eat. That's what Twitter was in its very primitive form. And now you see people literally trying to rip their heads off through Twitter. You see on like Instagram, you see people posting like, I mean, again, I'm not calling any specific person out, but you see sometimes like the so-called celebrities that are like posting stuff like how glamorous the life is, but deep down you really don't know what battles they're facing, right? So I definitely do think that there is a positive and there is a place in social media. I just feel like us as a society has had like we failed like epically trying to put that into place. My opinion on where social media lies, like when you look at like, for example, professional soccer, where you have the World Cup, right? That's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, world tournaments that we have in humanity. Now it's a lot easier for the players to communicate what they're going through, what it's like to be there, what their feelings are about the game, you know, all this stuff, and it's easier to communicate faster with people, and the people know, you know, what they're about, where they're at. So for things like that, and then for things like, for example, what we're doing with, you know, connecting with other people in a very respectful, obviously very respectful manner and very productive manner, you know, I think there's definitely a place in social media in society for social media. What do you think?
So my entire business is built off of social media, and you know, when I moved to Washington, I'm up in the Spokane area. I moved here almost 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years in January. I didn't know a single person here. And I use social media, again, to connect with others who might share the same interests. You know, moms who had kids of a similar age group. So from that perspective, I appreciate everything that social media has to offer. I have to be really careful because, and this is something I had, you know, shared with you yesterday and, you know, in the last like couple of months that we've been chatting, my struggle isn't so much, you know, with depression or anxiety. My struggle is anger. And I get bitter really easy. I get resentful. After a long day of working and, you know, dealing with retail, because even though fishing is fun, it's still retail. You have people that aren't always nice. I've got a lot of flack for being a girl in the fishing department. And it's like,
yeah.
But it's, you know, after all of that, I come home and then I'm just snappy and quite the grumpy, guess. But that's probably my biggest struggle with mental health. I just tend to be a little hot-blooded. And coming back into social media, it's very easy for this to go two ways. I can hop on, see videos and pictures of you catching fish, and really appreciate that, really appreciate our conversations. Or I can feed into all the negativity or all the, oh man, this person is landing this fish and I'm yelling at my kids right now. Like, you know, so it's a fine line of how you respond to it. I think what's really important is it's our responsibility to train our way of thinking so that way we can recognize those behaviors, because I've caught myself doing it, of going down that highlight reel of, well, you catch more fish than I do, and I'm not good at this, and then I start to feel bad about myself, and then I'm angry about it. Or, I mean, let's be honest, like, with everything that's going on, seeing all of this stuff that's happening, you're just like, you've probably seen it on my social media, where I'm just, like, ranting, and I'm like, and I just walk right into that trap. So,
yeah.
Blessing and a curse, but I would say, again, like, the biggest point there is, it's our responsibility to know what your behaviors are and to know what is an issue for you and just keep an eye on that.
Right.
So that's what I have to do. And I just go back to, what was my intended purpose? Why am I here? And it's connecting with people like you, and I follow some really cool accounts of women who fish. Actually, this gal, the casting queen stuff that I always wear, I met her on Instagram. When I ran for Mrs. Washington back in August, and I reached out to her, and I'm like, how cute, you have like a little crown, my children are knocking on the door. Children, I'm definitely on a video chat right now. No, thank you. 10 minutes, honey. Sorry. Mom life.
It's perfectly fine.
Anyways, I met this girl through Instagram because she makes all this amazing clothing for female anglers. So I'm like, awesome. So I just remind myself of the intended purpose, like what my intention on social media is and how it can serve me in a positive way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the way I see social media sometimes, especially now, like I see it more of a, it might sound kind of bad, but it's more like, for example, like a mushroom trip, like a psychedelic mushroom trip. Because when you go into that, it's kind of like when you go into social media. If you go in there angry, it's gonna only amplify that anger. If you go in there happy, it might amplify that as well. You know. I think you're on muted. You're on mute.
I'm definitely yelling at my children.
Okay, so for those that are not watching the video, I'm just seeing Larayna moving her lips, and I'm thinking she's saying something, but in reality, she's yelling at her kids. So, but yeah. Anyway, continuing on to that. So yeah, like that's kind of a little bit how I view it. Is you go in with whatever mentality you're gonna be in, and then you're just gonna amplify it. Like I've seen people, and in some respects, like myself, like has been. I can use myself as an example where if I'm like feeling pretty depressed and I look at something and then I feel envy, it only amplifies that depression because it's like, well, this is what I don't have and all that stuff. So, over the last like I don't know, I think ever since I was like 5, as far as I can remember, I know definitely envy has been something that has plagued me for sure. So recently it's been a lot better, especially once I was able to pull myself out of that rut from the depression that I kind of fell into with the COVID and the restrictions and not being able to talk to people. Is the fact that it definitely, like, once I got into fishing and everything, and I realized that, hey, I didn't catch a fish, but you know what, I still had a good time. You know, it was kind of weird, it slowly kind of started manifesting itself into like I don't have anything to prove to anyone or even myself for that matter. I just do whatever I want and not have any unrealistic expectations, right?
But well, and you know, I feel like with fishing and just being in the outdoors in general, it's so interesting because COVID, like the whole thing was we have to, separate. I think my time here is almost up because they're banging on the door. But
Oh no.
with COVID, like it was, hey, you have to be socially distanced, and I'm like, well, what better way to do that? Fishing is like the ultimate social distancing sport.
Mm-hmm.
So I am a very social person, and I can talk your ear off. I love meeting new people and hearing their stories, and I will pull every single story out of you, and I will share all of mine because I can't stop.
Mm-hmm.
But fishing is the one place that I will go and just totally okay with being by myself, and the silence and the relaxation and just the sound of the water rushing and the birds and everything else. Like on social media, you don't get that. All you get is the man, you went out and you caught a really big fish. Or what they don't see is I've gone out so many times and I haven't caught a fish, but I wasn't upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was grateful to be there and have that opportunity. So again, that social media has the community piece and the connecting piece, but it doesn't have it's your highlight reel because we're showing the exciting stuff that's happening in our lives. Mm-hmm. So if you're not careful, you can especially with COVID now. Washington, we're rolling back to phase 1, which is such a bummer because they're going to kill all our small businesses, but that's a whole other conversation we don't have time for.
Yeah. I mean, we can make the obviously the chronological observation that this is what's happening because it's what's happening. But obviously, if we start talking about it, then it can get into politics, which is what this podcast is not about. Don't worry, you're not the first person to want to talk about politics. But so yeah, and like and that's kind of one of the things too. Like suicides went up ridiculously, and very little media coverage, like very little. I mean, you can find stats on that, and they're really, just it's shocking, like how badly that went up. And then child abuse and child hunger and domestic abuse and all these different things that we didn't even know were going on. And all of a sudden, we get tested with a pandemic, and then they just amplify even more. And I mean, it's crazy that we're not talking about it. Like mental health was already getting a little bit of coverage before COVID, and then it's not getting anything at all anymore. Like it's just this is kind of the reason why I wanted to keep it not political, because I mean, once you kind of go into politics, it's the nuance is gone. Like, we don't really have the nuance in terms of actually bringing these topics to the forefront. Like my last guest, we actually talked about homelessness, and it was a very good conversation because we were able to talk about like what are the factors that can contribute to homelessness, and also we also came to the realization that there's probably many more that we don't even know of. So
Right.
that's kind of why I'm
You
hoping.
know,
Hmm?
sorry, I didn't cut you. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's fine.
I mentioned earlier that nonprofit that I sit on the board for
Mm.
called Communities in Schools. And before COVID was a thing, their primary goal is to get at-risk youth to graduate, and then they do a little bit of trying to transition them into like to college or to trade schools and to make those opportunities available for them.
Mm.
But their main focus is like the K through 12 group and just getting these kids to graduate. Well, when COVID happened, a lot of these kids were already growing up in a house where their parents are alcoholics or drug addicts or abusive. Some of these kids don't even know where they're actually going to sleep that night. They have no idea where their next meal is coming from. These are little kids with some really big adult problems. And I'm getting chills talking about it because it's just breaking my heart. So,
Yeah.
like in schools, they would go in and they would create programs. So there was one of our schools, I want to say it was one of our high schools, they have a yoga program that there's a yoga instructor. She comes in, she teaches these kids how to like use like breath work and everything to cope with trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And a huge shift in the well-being of those kids. There was another school as a middle school that created a rock band, and these kids built a guitar together. They had a band. Incredible kids, so talented when somebody just put in the time and effort to believe in them. But it was some basic stuff, like they didn't have food, so communities in schools would make sure they had food, or warm clothing, because we live in a really cold area.
Right.
Well, guess what? When they closed down the schools, those kids that were getting food and shelter for that, chunk of their day, it's gone.
Yeah.
And we all went, oh, well, I guess we'll just hop on a computer and learn on Zoom. Those kids don't even have basic necessities. There was one story of a girl where she didn't even have like a decent pillow and sheets for her bed. So we just assume that she has an iPhone or a computer that she can hop on Zoom with. It's so sad.
Yeah.
Like, COVID, the domestic violence rate and the abuse rate in kids went through the roof because now these kids are there all the time with these abusers, and they're starving. And I spent every Thursday from February, like when this all started, maybe March, it might have been March, all the way through like August, every Thursday for an hour and a half, handing out boxes of food to families as they drove through. And I posted a couple times on social media about it, to try to reach some of those people that may need it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, I'm not doing this for me. Like, I'm not doing this so my social media followers will go, good job, you're so kind. I'm like, that's not why I'm here. So.
Yeah, I think that's that you bring up a good point. Like when you like literally in the last two sentences where it's like you said, like you're doing it because you really want to make a difference and it's coming from you, from your heart, that this is an issue that's important, and I think it should be important to a lot more people. It's sad that I think the child hunger went from 1 in 7 to 1 in 5, like just from the lockdowns. And I know there were several school districts in where I used to live that tried to, at the very least, like, hey, bring your kid around and we'll at least give them a free lunch or something. And they tried doing something like that, right? Like my thing, it's like there are a few people there that might think, well, if I do this, I might get like brownie points in the social media world and all that stuff. And I do find that kind of disturbing because I think it also kind of highlights one of the something about their mental health, where it's like they need to constantly seek approval and stuff like that. Whereas like, dude, if you want to do something, just do it. Like, I mean, if you want to, like, there's one thing between doing something and then trying to inspire other people to do the same thing or doing something. And then there's something where there's that. And then there's a difference between that, and then also, oh well, look at me, I am righteous and all this stuff, and it's yeah, virtue signaling, yeah, like a lot of it, it's I feel like a lot of it does come from just like a very righteous point of view, and it's like it's sad.
Right.
And I'm a big person of like finding pragmatic solutions, and being pragmatic is like, well, you do your thing and like share it with the world. You don't necessarily have to take credit for it.
Right. Yeah, I that's actually, I mean, gosh, we could have had a whole session on just talking about this, but it's almost like the Pavlov's dog theory, where if I do this behavior or if this happens, then I'll get this reward for it.
Mm-hmm.
And we as a society have kind of trained this into people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really torn. I'm like, either way, if that is why that person is doing that, is it such a bad thing that they donated their time and that, they volunteered? Is it so bad? Because still the end result is they still served their community, even though they did it for a reason that wasn't really genuine. I mean, something good still came out of it.
Oh, right.
But also, so it's a really weird, I'm like, I don't know. I've had this conversation a couple different times, because in pageantry, the biggest deal is you get out in your community and you do all these things. And I was really self-conscious about, gosh, I'm afraid that if I put on this sash and crown and I go do that, are people thinking that I'm just doing it because I have this on so that you can see me and go, good job, you're so awesome. But the truth is, when I joined pageantry, I went in because I knew it would challenge me to go out and be in my community more. So I don't know if social media tells the entire story, and that's why I try to be really careful to, as annoying as it is, like, if I'm giving a homeless person food, I don't need to have my camera, like, dude, you're taking the last shred of that guy's dignity, like, just so you can get some Instagram, like, hits, Yeah. Little hits of, like, dopamine when you get likes and stuff, and, so again, it's kind of a weird feeling for me. I love that people are getting out and doing good things in their community, but I don't need to know about every single thing you do. I think you being a good person is, there are other things about your personality that I should be able to pick up on that from. So
yeah, I mean, you shouldn't really need to promote you being a good person. That's where I think I draw the line. Because there's one thing, there's one thing of like promoting what you're doing, and then there's the difference between that. Like, it's very thin. It's a very thin line. I would make that opinion that it's a very thin line between, well, here's what I did, please help out whatever way you can, versus like, here's what I did, I'm a good person.
Yeah.
And I get what.
It's definitely, and I hope that the people that follow my page and, see all of these different things, I hope it's a way for me to inspire them to find the thing that they care about, to get involved with their community. Mm-hmm. So, again, it's like, I guarantee I have people that are just like, oh, Larayna thinks so highly of herself. I'm like, because it's bound to happen, but to state, for the record, my intention is for you guys to stop watching football and to go volunteer.
Yeah, that's not going to happen in Texas.
For like an hour.
Good luck trying to sell that to Texans. Good luck.
No lake time until, and no hunting either.
Ooh, again, hard sell. Hard sell. Well, I mean, there's like you said, there's nothing wrong with like, if somebody brags about it, but at least like you said, they contribute, right? This is an issue that really should, like, these type of issues shouldn't really discriminate. That it's just what we're doing is basically just kind of highlighting the differences and why we should kind of more focus on the former, which is basically doing things because it's the right thing to do and not necessarily promoting yourself, versus something from more of a vanity standpoint, which I feel like does happen a lot in social media. It's the trap because it gets the likes, right? So it's a social media trap, and social media is like anything else. Too much of it, it'll ruin your life. I know I was very hesitant towards. I'm actually to this day, I'm still very hesitant towards trends, just because that's the kind of person that I've always been ever since high school. Really,
Right.
never wore Jordans until people were like stop talking about them. I'm like, all right, I think I want to buy a pair of Jordans or something. You know, didn't have an Instagram until like 4 or 5 years after it launched because everybody had it, and I was just like, I don't. No, no, no. And then same thing with TikTok. I just created a TikTok. Was it yesterday? And yeah, like for the longest time, I was like, screw TikTok, all that stuff, and whatever, this and that. And now it's like, well, if I want to start a business, it definitely helps, in terms of reach. So why not, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
I know that's how they get us.
yeah,
Like I said, my whole business is built on Facebook. But I ventured into Instagram for it, and I'm like, oh man, I hate this so much because I have my personal Instagram, I've got my business Instagram, I've got my personal Facebook, I've got my business Facebook, and I'm like, I'm just tired of looking at my phone sometimes.
yeah,
So, yeah. But and I think, to just close the thought on what we were just talking about, not so much about the self-promotion piece, I think we kind of ventured away from it just a little bit. The important piece there was trying to keep yourself mentally in check with not going, well, wow, this person is volunteering all the time. This person is fishing all the time. Like, they're just doing all these amazing things, and I'm over here doing nothing, So it's like, again, we're seeing different clips of people's lives. We're not seeing the entire piece. So I think we started there, and then we kind of ventured off because that was a little subtopic that I think was important. But it's mostly just trying to not judge my life in comparing what somebody else is doing. So
yeah.
I feel like that was an important piece of something we were chatting about.
Well, the connection that I was trying to make is that because remember I said that it was disturbing that there's people like that they're using it to promote
Yes.
themselves, because it's not that they shouldn't do it because they shouldn't help out if they're only gonna promote about themselves. It's just that I feel like it's another element of mental health because it's disturbing in that regard that you need the approval because I would imagine that translates into other social relationships like with friends and all that stuff and like sometimes
Right.
like you might fall into a group where it might be counterproductive to your health physically or emotionally
totally.
yeah, exactly. So, and because you want to feel accepted, they accepted you in this group, and it's not really good for you in the long run. So that's where that's where I was trying to make the connection in sense of how it's disturbing from a mental health standpoint. Because, again, I was talking about it with my last guest. We see like I don't know if you know who Jocko Willink is, right? Marine dude.
Maybe.
I'm not Marine dude. Sorry, Navy SEAL.
I don't know.
What about David Goggins?
I do know who David Goggins is.
Okay, David Goggins. What is it? David Goggins, Joe Rogan, Cam Hanes. I'm pretty sure you know who Cam Hanes is. You have to. Like, you're an outdoors woman.
Now I'm writing it down because I'm gonna look after and be like, oh, duh.
Well, anyway, they're all in the same realm. Like, all of them. Like,
Yeah.
Jocko Willink is an amazing leader, and he's always posting on his Instagram like pictures of his watch because he's up at 4:30, handling his business, going to the gym, whatever. Goggins, you see him all the time talking about like how he hates running, but he does it anyway. So it goes back to like what I was saying about what I was saying about making that connection where it's like if you're looking for like self approval. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with looking up to these guys because I think we can definitely draw some inspiration. But if you go in there with the constant mentality of like, oh, I need to be approval, so I want to be like this person because I know people accept me this way, and I mean, it can go in a lot of different things. Like I want to be really thin or really shredded or not like I don't know. Have blonde hair if you want to dye your blonde hair, like your hair blonde or something, like, I don't know, like I want to do all these different things. Yeah. I feel like that's what's disturbing. The fact that, if you're not careful with that, you can fall into those little traps. And in social media, I mean,
Right.
all of that's there, like
Yeah.
I started waking up at 4:30 because of, again, Jocko Willink. So now I'm waking up at 4:30 going to the gym, but also because it helps because then I can actually go to the gym and then after work go fish. So it makes it easier.
Right.
So
Hey man, all to make room for fishing. Like I'm all
yeah,
part of that.
yeah,
So that's funny. Yeah, no, there's a lot of pressure on social media, and like for women, like I'm constantly, because you know it all has to do with what you interact with, and occasionally, like I have a couple of friends who work in the beauty industry, but I've liked a couple of their things, and now other things are starting to pop into my feed where it's like women like getting Botox and everything, and I'm like, I saw this one disturbing thing where she like stuck the needle. It's like a flexible needle, and it's like right underneath your eyeball, and like right underneath her like neck, and it's like needles like flexing just under the skin, and I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna look old. It'll be fine.
yeah. No, yeah,
No, it's not happening. But a lot of girls, like a lot of women, feel pressured to do that, and you know, society, it's been rough. Like,
yeah,
um,
yeah. I mean, because even like, I think was it you? I don't know. Because I follow so many like hunter women, outdoors women,
yeah,
again, because honestly, like I'm not getting into like this whole like, oh, I'm a male feminist or something. Like, no, no, it's just I'm being objective as objective I can possibly be, and like for me, I'll draw inspiration from wherever it comes. I'm not
right,
that what is it proud of. I mean, I'm a proud person, but not that proud to the point where it's like, oh, I'm not gonna do what she says because she's a girl, even though it's working, right? Like
right,
I have a friend that introduced me to like the rattle traps, introduced me to braided line, and I listened
yeah,
and I did it, and I ended up catching fish. Like the fish I caught, the 3 pounder I caught earlier today, was on a rattle trap. Again, recommended by a woman. But
yeah. Good
it,
for her. I'm
yeah,
gonna need her Instagram profile.
I will definitely send her Instagram profile because she's a cool
Yeah,
person. Yeah, she's a cool person. And but where I was getting at is like, for example, like the marketing behind some of the products now, like pink and this and that, which is nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong if you like the pink, right?
right.
But you got to make the distinction that's like, well, you don't necessarily have to be, even though you're in the outdoors world, you don't necessarily have to be in your own box. You can like integrate,
Right.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some stigma
No,
there.
I there is. It's so working in the fishing department. One of the things that just grinds my gears is when they'll send us those like combo kits that are. It'll be like the ladies combo kit, and it'll be like a pink button cast reel. I'm like, who besides children who uses this? Like,
Yeah.
what is this? I'm like, none of these like lures are worth a darn. Like, I'm not using any of the soft plastic in here. Like, this bobber is from like the 1950s. I'm like, but it's pink.
Yeah.
No. Now, I did buy a Tiffany blue Garcia. I'm like, you know what? Even if I was a dude, I would still pick this color because it's badass. So,
Well,
no.
okay, there's nothing wrong. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with liking that. Like, if you still like the whole breakfast at
Yeah.
Tiffany's type of thing, and like they have, like I've said it constantly, the teal or the Tiffany's blue Glock looks freaking amazing. Like,
I have a friend that has bought a rose gold pistol, and I'm like, I'm
hmm,
about that. Yeah, I need that. So,
I can't get anything plated like that because I don't know, cartel guys have stuff like that. So,
no, you're gonna get racially profiled because you just don't wear a giant belt buckle at the same time.
but I'm in Texas. I wear a giant belt buckle. Like, come
That's all you
on.
guys can wear.
Yeah. Well,
Like a,
I mean that's just me. I
that's
wear
funny.
big belt buckles just because I like them, and but yeah. I mean, like, so yeah. So there's definitely pressure, like, because I mean, I know you had that one fly fishing story where you were like out with no waders and you were just in your jeans and
Oh
everything.
yeah,
Like, I don't know. You want to go ahead and share that? But like, yeah, go ahead and share it.
sure.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. So I just bought waders probably 2 weeks ago, and you know the part of the river that I was fishing on was really wide. I had a couple guys across the bank from me, and then some guys up to the right. They're all bundled up in their coats because it was transitioning from the end of summer into fall, so the water was already really cold. It was pretty chilly outside because it's dusk, and I just started fly fishing. So I'm not good at long distance casting. Actually, I'm working on the casting in general. But I was determined to get my line out to where the fish were rising. And so I'm in Levi's, and I just walk straight out into the river, and I'm just standing like waist deep in the river, and the guys on the bank are just like concerned. They're just looking at me like I don't know what they were thinking, but they were all bundled up and like their gear on, just sitting on the bank. I'm like, you guys aren't even casting. You guys are just like drowning some worms or some power bait right now. But I'm just like out there working this fly line, and I'm standing waist deep in Fall River water in Washington. But hey,
Oh
I
man,
was determined to get my fly where it needed to be.
they probably were thinking like she's either really crazy or really badass, and either way, I do not want to mess with that.
Probably a little bit of both, I'm hoping.
If it was both, then even worse. So definitely don't want to mess with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so that was my whole plot, was maybe if I just look like a lunatic, then they won't mess with me. So
no, and I mean,
my kids screaming in the background.
yeah. The good thing is that we're almost about to be done. So,
Okay.
so we only have. I'm actually going to start announce that we only have about 5 minutes left. But so yeah. Before I get to the final thoughts, like I definitely do think that it like we need to kind of establish like we need to figure out like if there's any barriers of entry, so like for younger kids, like when they when you're talking about like something another activity for them to get going because it decompresses them and everything. So I definitely would love to have you back again if again your kids allow you to
Yeah.
have you back again. We can discuss like barriers of entry that kids might face regardless of income or just time and other things. And then also just we can keep talking about your business and all of the work that you do to like help make a difference in the world. But yeah, so with that being said, any final thoughts regarding any aspect of mental health you want to share?
I'm gonna say closing thoughts. Whatever it is that you value and whatever it is that you have been telling yourself you don't have time for, find time for it. And I personally, I don't care if that's fishing. Whatever it is, maybe it is watching a football game and you haven't prioritized that. Just do it. Make time for yourself. Self-care is probably the most important thing that people overlook all the time because it's not on the to-do list. Put yourself on the to-do list.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a good that your kids are
Sorry.
it's all good. So yeah, again, we're almost done. But yeah, I think you're right that we need to prioritize maybe a little self-care a little bit more. And I know we were kind of being hard on football, but like honestly, like you said, like if that having a beer and watching football and not mentally decompresses you, well, why not, right? Why not?
Yeah.
Anything that works for you. We're not a monolith. We're not a one size fits all type of solution to mental health. I mean, that's the reason why, again, this podcast exists, and I hope it kind of like highlights as many scenarios as we possibly could highlight. And that is really like my last thought in this episode of the podcast, just to make sure that like you said, take time, prioritize at least a little bit in terms of like self-care, whatever it may be, as long as it's safe, and you have access to it. And yeah, I think we can be in a better position if we just learn how to take care of ourselves first a little bit, and not in the sense of being selfish, but just I mean, it is kind of a little bit selfish, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, prioritize yourself a little bit more sometimes.
Yeah. The old saying, and I'll end with this thought, it's impossible to pour from an empty cup. So
Yeah.
your cup is not full, and like you have to be selfish in order to give back to others sometimes. No.
Yeah, that's another word that has a lot of stigma, and I think I'm definitely gonna write it down for the next time we get on the podcast. We can discuss that further. Yeah, and again, one last minute. So for the listeners that are still listening, I say this a lot, and I'm going to continue saying this, but the line from the show called Community, where it's like sometimes the hardest prison is to get out of are the ones without bars. That resonates with mental health, and you kind of placing yourself in a mental prison. No one can do the most amount, like the person that can do the most amount of damage is yourself.
Yeah.
So if you're already beating yourself up, then it's going to be easy for anybody else to pick you apart. And it's all about trying to do your best to acknowledge, are you in a mental prison? And if so, do you need to get help? There's nothing wrong with getting help. There's nothing wrong with venting to someone. There's nothing wrong with talking about these issues in a healthy way. There's nothing wrong with using fishing as a way to escape. There's nothing wrong with any of that. So whatever works for you, whatever you think is going to be best for you, I recommend and I encourage you to do that route.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, Larayna. So, really quick, tell the people where they can find you. I will also on the YouTube video. I will also put your Instagram handle. But
Sure.
yeah, go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram is perfect. I am on Facebook as well, and just searching my name, which I'm assuming will be attached to the YouTube video. That's how you can get a hold of me. If you know any female business owners, that's what my business is based around, is helping women excel and grow their businesses. So again, Facebook and Instagram are going to be the two best places.
Your Instagram handle is Larayna.yev, right?
It's Lara.yev. So Lara.yev.
Lara.yev. Okay.
Yeah, decided to shorten that for people because it's a lot. It's a lot of names in there.
No, it's all good. I mean, and to listeners still listening, you can always find me as well on New Age Alchemist. That's basically my handle for everything, YouTube, podcast, and everything. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation, and we're going to start again. My light actually gave out, so we actually went over the hour because this only lasts about an hour. But I'm still here, and yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody, and see you next time.
All right, perfect. Thanks.
Bye.